I don't know if I want to say this. When All right, guys, I'm back in the gym with another limited edition apparel drop. This is the new Live, Learn, Pass On shirt. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about our cambered grip American cable attachment. This attachment has 4 grips and it's cambered. So when you flip it, it actually becomes 8 grips. And if you turn it upside down, there's actually 16. This is one of our most used cable attachments out in the gym. Even got that full range of motion. We got a second limited edition drop this month as well. Head over to elitefts.com, pick up the shirt, pick up the cable attachments, and we'll see you next. The last week, I was out of town, so I was training at a different gym. And maybe the guys listen to the podcast or not. So I get recognized. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Probably most of the time I don't, which is actually a good thing because you just want to go train elite. And so I'm talking to this guy and he ends up, he's very, very accomplished power lifter. So he's got his buddies with him and he's introducing me to his buddies. They don't know who I am, which is cool. That's fine. You know,
no, it's not, Dave. You better tell him.
It's even way, well, he was, right? Okay. And so then he was talking about how it's important, you know, to your point with those other guys that they know the history of the sport. And I pushed back on him and said, it's important. Yeah. But what's even more important is you to continue to keep getting better and to push your own path. And then the guy looked at me, he was dead serious. He wasn't fucking with me at all. You know, so this is not a rip on him, but he said, it's important to recognize and respect your elders. And I thought for a minute, elders, fuck. You know, then it was like a mind fuck. And I'm like, it was a respectful, it was a compliment.
Yeah.
But it hit me a little weird.
You're driving home later and you just have that like concussed grenade sound.
Yeah. It's like, yes, I come home and I'm telling my wife, I'm like, but I think I was just called an elder.
Oh yeah.
Anyhow, to get off of that, we got a 5 there from the mentoring thing. Then what have you done in sport? So it's very general here. So it could be bodybuilding, it could be powerlifting. Right now you're training for a show.
Yeah.
Which is,
I'd give myself a 3 or a 4 on that one.
Well, what level though?
Yeah. So in powerlifting, I was like, okay, drug-free lifter.
Yeah.
At a time when almost no one lifted raw or drug-free. So competition was not impressive and nor was I. Then in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I have pretty good competitive record, but you know, like I was and am juiced up, so I don't compete in the most prestigious federation, which is drug tested. That doesn't stop most of the people in there from using drugs, but I don't cheat on principle. So I'm like, So I do some local and other federations. I've done quite well. I'm a pretty formidable jiu-jitsu competitor, given that, you know, my limitations of being a short king and stuff like that. I'm kidding. Do you know that vernacular yet? Yeah.
I don't know that one, so you're going to have to explain that one.
So I think short people have like inferiority complex, so they call themselves short kings now.
Short kings.
To make sure that, you know, like, well, you're still a king.
Okay,
so
I get it.
You know, facetious. So I'm okay at jiu-jitsu. And then last year, so I used to suck at bodybuilding, and then I finally figured out how to peak. And last year, I took 2nd in the super heavyweights at Masters USA's out of a class of like 8 or 9 people. And I was the leanest guy in the supers by a long shot, it seemed. So it was pretty cool. I was like, okay, like, I'm a nationally competitive bodybuilder, which is kind of
yeah. So we'll give you 4.5.
Oh, please.
All right, 4. It's 4. 4. I don't want to get into the points because it's too hard to do the math.
You start adding up. Like, I don't know, man. You're a fine coach.
AI still isn't good at math either, so I can't use that. Have you made it? So this will play in this next one. These two kind of tie together. Have you coached or trained anybody to a level better than the level that you've achieved?
Oh yeah, almost everyone's better than me. Yeah, it's easy. It's like if you can't do one, the other one's going to be higher.
And then how many years competing in strength sports? So when you started that powerlifting, 20, 2 decades. So I have a note here that over 15 years is a 5.
Oh, hell yeah.
5.
You just got to hang around long enough.
Exactly. For this thing, longevity matters.
Turn into an elder. I'm kidding.
Yes.
I had to plug you on that one.
An elder. So how many years of serious training? That's also over 15 becomes a 5.
Yep.
How many years coaching and helping others?
20.
So that's a 5 because over 15 years is a 5 there. And then that gets 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 39, where when you go to if you suck or not, you don't suck.
score 35 and over is a great coach.
All right.
Right? Yeah, there you go. And then if you guys want to find this, you can just search rank your powerlifting coach or Dave Tate rank your coach.
This is really cool.
But there is some shortcomings with that, with this whole thing where Mike to share years ago, he tried to use this to find, I think it was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu coach.
Mm-hmm.
So he tried to use that. And then he used it and he found somebody that had all the high marks, but then they sucked.
Yeah.
Because they weren't good at coaching beginners.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's a different skill set.
They might not, I don't know, Mike, to share a story with this, but I can, is it okay if I expand
on sure.
that? So they might not have been good at coaching at all.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out that probably the most important requirement, as far as I can tell from coaching, is, are you mentally and emotionally immersed in the process and value of helping other people become their best? Like maximum giving a shit as to how your athletes do. A kind of giving a shit that does at least two things for you. One, it makes you stay up at odd hours and use lots of your free time to try to learn and improve your coaching skills through whatever methods possible. And I could just go back and read a ton of elite articles, and that's well on my way. The other is, do you come to your athletes with the ethos of, I'm going to empower you to do your very best, and I really give a shit about how well you do. And if you give me sweat and blood and determination, I will give you everything in return back to be your best facilitator possible. Those two things, that sort of tireless search for knowledge and that desire to help the athlete. There's a few others I can think of that make a great coach, like iterating on the process and trying to improve and saying, how can I be wrong? What am I missing here? How can I systematize this problem a bit better? How can I understand the universe of coaching a bit better? Those qualities are so important that you can have coaches that don't have half those accolades, and they coach anyone else under the table, because as the client experiences it, they're the fucking best coach in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need any degrees, you barely need to know how to read. You just have to make sure. I'm joking. Hopefully you can read well enough to get on articles and stuff. But it's really a lot of coaches who have all those accolades. They've done really well for themselves. And because they did well for themselves, other people who are good came to them for coaching. So now they can mark off some of those, like, well, I've coached pros and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they really don't care much about coaching. It's not something that deeply infuses sort of their every fiber of their being. And then they'll never get as good as someone else who really gives a shit. I say giving a shit about something in a true deep way, not like nominally. I mean, just like you give some of your time and effort to it. It beats almost everything, because while someone else could have accolades and all these degrees, they never spent the deep learning part, deep thought in, how can I coach better? How can I get people stronger? It really vexes your brain to do. You ever have a lifter, Dave, where you're like, just can't figure out this asshole's deadlift? Fuck, I've coached so many people. I've boosted everyone's deadlift. Fuck is wrong with this alligator arm motherfucker?
Oh yeah.
Damn it. Is it more deficits? Is it a grip problem? Is it a technique problem? Is it a mentality problem?
Is it a messenger problem?
100%. Maybe you're not giving the right cues the right ways. And if you vex your mind enough on these kinds of things, two things happen, probabilistically. One, they're more likely to get their deadlift PR from you. Two, the skill set that you're building, kind of like the GPTs, large language models right now, they pile through massive amounts of data and develop a really deep intuition about what things are. Humans are all large language models. That's what we do. If you really try and solve client problems, and you get into hard, difficult problems that you can't solve, and you really try to just grind through it, really take a different approach, really think about it before you go to sleep, dream about the shit, wake up, repeat, you will start to develop a coaching wisdom that is, man, it's just real difficult to beat. You don't need degrees or any of that shit. Now, this is me discrediting myself, because I ain't got none of that. And I got all those fucking degrees and accolades. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, a lot of the folks listening to this may be like, man, fuck, I had to win the world championships and get a fucking PhD for this shit. Like, you don't. You just have to read a crap load of articles online, bunch of videos, bunch of podcasts, train yourself as hard as you've ever trained anyone, because you have to be the canary in the coal mine for this shit by yourself. And then when you apply your craft to the people that come to you to get better, you apply it with diligence and with just a passion to get people better. And if you do that for enough time, well, the data science problem takes care of itself. Your brain learns over time, and you'll develop an unreal skill set for how to really coach the living fuck out of somebody.
No, I think what you just summarized there is key. This was written 2 decades ago, before the
And it's valid in its own right.
And it is.
Because you can't intuit that is something you can look up about a coach.
Well, yeah, this
then
gives
you go to the coach.
Yeah, that
and
also,
you see if he breaks the barriers and other things. How do you Google someone to be like, hey, does coach this and that guy like bring a dedication to his clients that surmount what the fuck? That's not something you Google. That's not something ChatGPT can tell you. Unfortunately or fortunately, you have to interact with a human being to find that out. Now, nowadays with Reddit and reviews of people, you'll get some semblance of a guy, but also it's difficult because like a few people could have a problem with you and now you're evil on the internet.
Yeah.
Or a few hundred people think you're amazing, but never really deeply interacted with you. And they're like, this guy's the best coach, bro. You're like, do you really know that?
Yes.
Could be, could not be. I will say over time, people will say they'll trend towards this guy's a real good coach, real good. Everyone says it, then it's probably more likely to be true. But nonetheless, never can tell.
Yeah. And this was done before online training really became a thing. So it was a vetting mechanism, as you were saying, like here's your first phase of vetting
100%.
Where now, I think that skill that you're touching on of just say problem solving,
Sure.
right? Which isn't always going to happen because most people are pretty cut and dry,
Sure.
with what they're doing. But
Sure.
when it does happen, the coach has to be able to pull on those things because all the other things are going to be automated.
Sure.
And already a lot are. I
Sure.
mean, your app for hypertrophy is doing a lot, which we'll get into that.
Great.
But a lot are. But when you run into the speed bump, I think that's where the future of the actual coach becomes, is that,
Yes.
not so much this, shuttling back and forth of emails or text messages or whatnot,
Sure.
but a consultant, as you would have for an attorney or HR, whatever it's going to be, somebody that you're going to call to help go over that speed bump, because all the other things are going to kind of be automated.
100%.
There's
the numbers are pretty easy to automate. In the RP hypertrophy app, we've even automated most of the auto regulation. Like if I did this weight, this many reps, this many sets this week, what do I do next week? That's all taken care of. This machine logic is not that difficult. The nuance, the psychological stuff, the personal stuff, what is my grand goal? What should I be doing now stuff? That stuff an app can't quite handle yet. In the future, apps will handle, I think, almost everything. What a great time that will be, because essentially everyone can get expert coaching for, $20 a month or whatever. But right now, coaches have this area where they can be human and personable. And, an app can tell you, hey, do these numbers. But if you're feeling down that day, an app isn't likely to message you in a very believable way, even if it's AI.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, hey, do your best. Like, okay, but if I don't, what are you going to do? Nothing. But a coach is a human being. We have a coach at RP, Dr. Jen Case. She's won worlds a bunch in jiu-jitsu. She's a total freak. Like, just will beat you up, hands down. Her clients are like scared of her, I think. Not in a bad way, but in the way of like, when Dr. Jen says, I got to do these macros this week or lift these weights, I'm going to do it. Because she's a hard-nosed person and she expects me to have results. There's a human being back there somewhere who gives a shit whether or not I do the plan, who I'm a little bit intimidated by. That's a big part of coaching, of that human element, not just the intimidation factor, but like, hey, I don't feel motivated today. What do I do? Oh, geez, if I'm coaching, I got all sorts of shit to tell you. Anywhere from sarcasm all the way up through real, come to Jesus kind of talks. An app may at some point be able to do that. Will it be able to do it convincingly? Maybe. Will it be able to do it convincingly and also have that moral element to it? Where like, if you don't try and your coach knows you didn't try, it's not a matter of just like, oh, hey, no big deal. We'll try it again. Coach gives you that look and you're like, throw up your hands after the deadlift. So you got a third one. You're like, he's judging you. You may even deny. You still know. So next time you hit that set, you might not do that thing. Any kind of digital assistant, let's see, even in a super intelligent digital assistant, somebody who is an aggregate of all of the YouTube experts ever in one coach, that's very hypothetically feasible within 3 or 4 years. He might know everything. He might even be able to tell you incisive psychological shit right on the spot. But you could be like, yeah, it's AI. What the fuck is he going to do to me? Get in a robot body and beat me up? And then he does, and you're like, oh my God.
yeah. That's
I better do these deadlifts.
Another conversation.
That's it.
Let's stay on hypertrophy, because I've used the app for I have one mesocycle for 5 weeks, and the next one starts today. So it's a custom thing, and it's funny because he just connected us today. I sent a text message right back to your partner, Nick. And it's funny because he was asking what the experience was. I'm like, most of it's been user error. Mike's taking care of that.
Mind you guys, one of the best ways that you can support the podcast and your training is to join the crew. When you join the crew, you get an extra crew cast podcast every single month. You also get access to our Discord, which has a training Q&A with Team Elite FTS members. You get form checks. You can upload any of your training footage and have your lifts diagnosed, sometimes within minutes, by multiple people. Access to close to 30 different ebooks, training logs, and first sign up access to our weekend training retreats, train your ass off, and other events that we do. Biggest takeaways from that though, what people enjoy the most and get the most out of is the training Q&A and the form checks, as well as the extra podcast.